after 1700 AD, that is the modern Afghanistan. So by 1700 AD, what was the conditions of Afghanistan? Towards the south, Mughal Empire was there. Towards the west, Iranian Safavids Empire was there. Towards the north, Uzbek Khanates were there. So under this three mighty empire, triangular pressure, still they could able to retain their freedom to at least a smaller extent. And did you know the very interesting fact here that till 1700, sir, these people of Afghanistan, they did not use the term Afghans for identifying themselves. They did not call themselves as Afghans, but they called that country as Khorasan. Khorasan. If you ask an Afghanistan person in 1700 AD, what is your country? Then he should have told you that he was a Khorasan resident. Khorasan country. So when these three, especially out of these three empires, from the west, because people are of Islam, I already have said 90% of them are Islamic people. So normally Mughal was also Islamic people, Iranian Safavid were also Islamic people, but because of the high cultural connectivity with Iran, the effect of the Iranian Safavid was more on the Afghanistan people, to such an extent that in 1709, sir, right now please listen carefully, in 1709, if you see what was happening in the India, in 1707 itself, the last strongest ruler of Mughal Empire, that was the Aurangzeb, he was died in the 1707. So from 1707 we call the latter rulers as the latter Mughals, who are not too powerful. So that means the Mughal Empire declined. Yes or no? And even the Iranian Safavids, if you see by 1707, actually they are relatively comparably more stronger than the Mughals. So their impact was more on the Afghan people, the Khorasan people, that is the Khorasan country, they called themselves as. Now, in 1709, there was a tribal leader of Afghanistan. There was a tribe called as the Hotak tribe. Hotak, his name was called as the tribal leader of the Afghanistan. His name was called as the Hotak, 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 or Hotak. I don't know the name to call it, but Hotak. So this person, the tribal leader, he led a rebellion against the Iranian Safavids, and he wanted his country, or he wanted his tribals to be free from this Iranian Safavids impact. And he was successful in leading that rebellion, sir. And that is the reason in 1709, for the first time, Afghani people themselves has established a new kingdom under this Hotak, the leader of the tribals. And that kingdom was called as the Hotak dynasty, or the Hotak kingdom. Hotak kingdom. So that was the first time Afghanistan people having their own kingdom which was too stabilized, rather than having too much of influence from foreign empires. So for the first time, this Hotak empire or the Hotak dynasty started giving the people stability, and it was the kingdom which was very relatively comparably stronger than the previous tribal outfits. Now, so when this Hotak empire was started with, who is the person who established this Hotak empire or Hotak dynasty in Afghanistan? He was the Hotak, the name itself, the Hotak. So after him, another person has come, and that another ruler or another king of the Afghanistan after 1720s and 30s like that, and his name was Abdul Aziz. So he was the next king, and he was just cousin of the Hotak. And on this Abdul Aziz, another person has revolted, who was also an Afghani and was the son of this Hotak, and that person his name was Mahmud. So Mahmud revolted against this Abdul Aziz, and he took over the power of the Hotak dynasty, the Afghanistan kingdom. And he was too powerful. This Muhammad was too powerful to such an extent. He wanted to take revenge on the Iranian Safavids because his father actually fought against them. So they oppressed these tribals a lot in their view. So this Mahmud, when he came to power, he wanted to take revenge, and even in which form normally rulers or the kings take revenge? By capturing the lands. So this Mahmud, not only becoming the ruler of the Afghanistan, the kingdom of the Afghanistan, the king of Afghanistan, he even captured the Iranian Safavids lands also. Iran, he captured the Persia. Even he captured the main city of the Persia, capital city of the Persia also. And he declared himself as the king of Persia also, sir. To that an extent, Afghan people even established the empires. So this was happening. Mahmud came to power and he captured the Persia also. He declared himself as the Persian king. And do you believe that the Persian people just look like that when someone captured their lands? Persian people or the Iran and Persia both are same. Persia means the older name of the Iran. So when Mahmud came and captured the Persia, do you believe the Persian people just look like that? No, right? So another person from Persia, he revolted against the Mahmud, and his name was Nadir Shah. Very important name in even Indian history, sir. So Nadir Shah in 1738. So this year is not important, but I am saying in the timeline. So in 1738, Nadir Shah of the Persia, he revolted against the Mahmud. He got again the Persia back. Not only that, he invaded Afghanistan also, and he captured the main southern city of Afghanistan. That was the Kandahar. So Nadir Shah captured the Kandahar. And after capturing the Kandahar, because that was the capital city of Afghanistan then, so he captured that, and he killed the Mahmud, and he kept a puppet of Nadir Shah, who was an Afghani, as the leader of the Afghanistan. And who is that? And his name was Ahmad Shah Durrani. So this name is very important because after 1738, who was the ruler of the Afghanistan now? It was Ahmad Shah Durrani. So from 1738, we call the kingdom of Afghanistan as the Durranian Empire or the Durrani dynasty. So Ahmad Shah Durrani, sir, he was very important even in our Indian history because by 1747, that means after 5 to 6 years of he coming to the power, Ahmad Shah Durrani, he was the puppet of whom? Nadir Shah of Persia. So Nadir Shah kept him in Afghanistan and he went back. So this Ahmad Shah Durrani in 1747, sir, this year is very important. In 1747, the Afghanistan's ruler, that is the Durranian ruler, Ahmad Shah Durrani, he invaded India and he captured Delhi, sir. In the 1747, Ahmad Shah Durrani, that means the Afghanistan invaded India and Afghanistan captured Delhi. So what was happening in the 1747? By then in India, if you see, latter Mughals were too weak. After 1707, after the death of the Aurangzeb, the latter Mughals are too weak, and everywhere, provinces declared themselves independent from Mughal Empire, and there was a huge disintegration of our Indian Empire. And that was the period 1747 when even the European powers started growing up in the India. Because of our weakness, internal weakness of Indian Empire, when Mughal Empire was started disintegrating, that was seen as an opportunity to the European empires like British India started growing up. France, French army, French East Indian Company and British East Indian Company, they started growing up. They started growing up politically. And not politically, before 1760 it was not political, but economically they are, prowess. They have this economic prowess in India. So seeing this as an opportunity, he invaded. Ahmad Shah Durrani invaded India and he captured the Delhi in 1747. Now after 20 years, if you see, Another important event that is connected to Indian history with this Ahmad Shah Durrani is in 1761. Now we are in 1761. After 20 years of Durrani's empire, Durrani's power. So he captured Delhi in 1747 itself. But in 1761, he invaded again India. Ahmad Shah Durrani invaded again India, and by that time we have Maratha Empire stronger. We have Maratha Empire, so a Hindu empire, Maratha Empire. So these Marathas, by knowing that Marathas were alone, Ahmad Shah Durrani, he invaded India again, and in 1761 there was a battle of Panipat. This is the first battle of Panipat. This is very important in Indian history, sir. And in the battle of Panipat, Ahmad Shah Durrani of Afghanistan, he colluded with some of the Indian allies who were against the Maratha kingdom, and all this group, this coalition, Ahmad Shah Durrani along with some Indian allies, they had a battle with the Maratha Empire, and in 1761, that is in the battle of the Panipat, Maratha Empire was defeated by this Ahmad Shah Durrani of Afghanistan. They defeated the Maratha Empire. This was a huge victory to the Ahmad Shah Durrani of Afghanistan in that period. So that means Afghanistan was too aggressive in this period. After in these two empires, the Hotak Empire and the Durrani Empire, because they are their own empires. There is no foreign influence on them. They are free and they started expanding the territory. That is the reason Afghans, this is the unique nature of the Afghans, sir. They never accepted any foreign invasion of the country. They never accepted. They always revolted and they always rebelled against them. And they established their own empires. They are too furious also. They are too fierce tribals. To such an extent, even they defeated whom? The Maratha Empire in 1761. So this was happening, and now once 1761, when he captured even the Delhi and he defeated the Maratha Empire, we lost when he captured in the battle of Panipat. They captured, what are the provinces they captured from India? Afghanistan captured what provinces? One is the Punjab province. The Punjab province was captured by whom? Ahmad Shah Durrani. And the Kashmir was captured by the Ahmad Shah Durrani. And now in 1776, after that means around 10 years from Battle of Panipat, he shifted his capital. Afghanistan capital was till then Kandahar. That is in the southern side, rural side of the Afghanistan. But this Ahmad Shah Durrani in 1776, once attaining a huge progress in the region, he shifted his capital to the northern side. That is the Kabul. So from 1776, Kabul was again the capital of the Afghanistan under the Durranian Empire. So this was happening in 1776. So he shifted to Kabul. Now Afghan Durrani Empire was going on well. They even defeated Maratha Empire. And in India, what is happening after 1770s? East India Company came to power. They started annexing the complete India. So India was on the weakened side after 1770s to almost around 1800s. So now during the 1800s, if you see, after 50 years from East India Company getting the Diwani right in 1765. So after 1765, towards the end of the 18th century, British India became stronger. And even in the Iran, under Nadir Shah, after Nadir Shah, even Iran, the Persian Empire also started growing up. So in the 1800s, if you see, this Afghanistan's Durrani Empire or Durrani dynasty, which was too stabilized by Ahmad Shah Durrani, who was the puppet of once Nadir Shah. So they, in the 1800s, they have a huge threat from the western side, from Persia, and from the eastern side, from British India. Especially to say not British India, sir, because Afghanistan has a border with the Punjab province of British India. Punjab was till then not annexed by British India in 1800s, starting of the 1800s. So Punjab it has its own uniqueness. So Punjab has raised a flag of Sikh kingdom. So a new Khalsa was formed under Guru after the Guru Gobind Singh. Under him, a new Khalsa was formed, the army of the Sikhs, and they established their own Sikh empire in India. So this Punjab province, that is the Sikh empire, they have the boundary with whom? Afghanistan. So from east, Sikh empire became a threat to the Afghanistan, and from the west of the Afghanistan, this Iranian empire or Persian empire became a threat to the Afghanistan. So now again a threat has started in the starting of the 1800s. It went to such an extent that if you see in 1823, so this is very important, sir. In 1823, the Sikh king, who was the Sikh king? He was the very, very important character in Indian history. He is the Maharana Ranjit Singh. In 1823, he he waged a war against the Afghanistan, and he captured back Punjab. He captured back even the Kashmir from Afghanistan, sir. Very important point. If Maharana Ranjit Singh in 1823 would not have captured Kashmir back from Afghanistan, we would not have Kashmir today in our India. So that credit of capturing back Kashmir from Afghanistan was actually to be given to the king of the Sikh empire of them, that is the Maharana Ranjit Singh. So he even captured back the Punjab and the Kashmir. It was a huge defeat to the Afghanistan. Huge defeat. So if you see by 1838, so in between that what was happening? Sikh empire under Maharana Ranjit Singh, he captured back Kashmir and Punjab. But here in India, from 1823 to 1838, in that period, even British India annexed even the Punjab kingdom, that is the Sikh kingdom, was also annexed by the British India. So it became a part of British India in that period. So now Kashmir, Punjab and everything, these are the part of whom? The British Empire. Punjab province means, sir, please don't imagine only today's Indian Punjab. Punjab province means even the Punjab of the Pakistan. Because this Punjab, even the Pakistan provinces are also the part of British India. So by 1838, if you see, British India now became stronger in the south of the Afghanistan. So now Afghans have actually threat from whom? Towards the west they have threat from Persia, that is Iran, and towards the south they have the threat from British India. So by 1838, British India captured the Punjab, the Sikh kingdom also. Now they waged a war against the Afghanistan. The British India wanted to conquer even Afghanistan in 1838. In 1838, British India led an expedition to the Afghanistan. This is the first Anglo-Afghan war. This is the first Anglo-Afghan war. And when British India they went to the Afghanistan, and when they fell down, the last Durrani king, people were not happy. Afghanistan, this is the beauty of the Afghanistan people, sir. The people, they have a huge loyalty to their tribal leaders. They don't accept any foreign leader. That's the beauty of Afghanistan's unique culture. And when British Indian people in 1838, in the first Anglo-Afghan war, they captured the Afghanistan's ruler and they fell him, people were not happy. So people rebelled against the British India. In 1838, once British India captured Afghanistan, they did not want British India to be there. They want the foreign empire to be out of the Afghanistan. So British could not stand there. That is the reason by around 1842, so for 3 or 4 years, people revolted and rebelled. The Afghanistan people revolted against British India. By 1842, British India, thought to retreat back. Because even British India understood that these people are not going to listen. These are not like Indians to be, governed. Because Indians are a bit we have our inferiority complex then. We used to ourselves feel that we are lower than submissive to the British Empire. But Afghans are not like that. They are tribal in outlook. So they rebelled fearlessly against the British India. By 1842, the British India itself understood to realized, and it came back. But it just did not come back. It has put a puppet. British India has put a puppet, and his the name of the person who was put as the leader of Afghanistan was the Dost Muhammad. Dost Muhammad. So British India has put Dost Muhammad as the leader of the Afghans, and they accepted because they want their leader only to rule them. They don't want any other body and other foreign empires to rule them. So Dost Muhammad, after 1842, he started ruling Afghanistan, but he was loyal to whom? British India. Now, if you see by 1878, this is very important, sir. By 1878, what happened was, this British India, it has huge, what I can say, it has a huge tension. Not a tension, I'm not getting the right word, but it has huge competition from a new empire in the northeastern to the Afghanistan, that is the Russian Empire. So by 1878, if you see, there was a great competition expansionist competition between the British Indian Empire and the British India and the Russian Empire. So Afghanistan is in the crossroads of Asia. If at all Russia captures Afghanistan, the Russian Empire captures the Afghanistan, if Russia advances into Afghanistan, that would be a great threat to the British Indian Empire, because Russian Empire is the own empire of Asia. So people accept at least Russian Empire than the British Indian Empire in the whole Asia. So it was a huge threat to the British Indian Empire. That is the reason in 1878 British India again thought to capture Afghanistan. So a second Anglo-Afghan war happens. Actually, the motive of British India was to not let the Russia enter the Afghanistan region. It feared if at all Russia comes and lands in Afghanistan. That is the reason it itself went first and started a war with Afghanistan. Second Anglo-Afghan war. And when this happened, if you see in 1878, second Anglo-Afghan war started. And what happened in the war? British won, naturally, because British India was too powerful by then. So when it won the war, it said to the Afghanistan, there was a treaty between the ruler of Afghanistan. He is also the puppet of the British India itself. But as the British India wanted to fully conquer Afghanistan, they resisted. So there was a treaty in the second Anglo-Afghan war. And according to the treaty, very, very, tactically, British India has put a condition that the foreign relations of the Afghanistan should be completely surrendered to the British India. Afghanistan will be a sovereign country. It would be left as a sovereign country, independent state. But British India had one condition, that the foreign relations of Afghanistan should be in the hands of the British India. This is the condition that British India has put. And there was no choice to Afghanistan people. So they accepted it. And from 1878 to around 1893, it was, all the foreign relations of the Afghanistan, because British India wants Afghanistan to not have a connection with Russia, to not have a good relation with Russia. That's why foreign relations power was taken to British Indian hands by waging a war. So this was happened at around 1878 to 93. And now in 1893, what happened was, this British India thought not only having these foreign relations, but it wanted a very clear specification, a clear boundary between Afghanistan and the British India. British India means even Pakistan, the present day Pakistan is also a part of British India then. So in the 1893, there was a treaty again between the Afghanistan ruler and the British India, and the British India drew a line between Afghanistan and the British India, that is the Pakistan area. They drew a line, boundary line, and that was called as Durand Line. Very important point, sir. Durand Line. So in the 1893, a Durand Line was drawn between Afghanistan and British India. But here lies actually conflict between Afghanistan and British India. That is, the line which was drawn by the British India, it was not acceptable to whom? Afghanistan. It was forcefully, imposed on them with the military might of the British. They have written a boundary between the Pakistan of the present, the then British India, and the Afghanistan. So the present today's border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, it has a huge, inconclusiveness in that, because British India drew that line. Afghanistan's, they did not recognize that line because they thought some of the lands of them, the Pashtun ethnic groups' lands, they were under the Pakistan and under this line. So this was not acceptable to the Afghans. So they did not accept in 1893. Even till today, Afghanistan did not accept this Durand line, the boundary line between the Afghanistan and the Pakistan. But British India has, drawn that. Forcefully it drawn that. So that actually, this is the first point where the conflict between Afghanistan and Pakistan, which is inconclusive even till today. The border problem was there even till today. It is there. Afghans want Pashtun lands also to be included in Afghanistan. But Pakistan says, no, the line which was drawn by British India is final. This is what Pakistan's stand was. So there was a border conflict always exist about this boundary line. So this was happened in the 1893. And from 1893 to around 1900, the last 10 years of the 19th century. Now, by seeing all these things, the Russian Empire was seeing everything. So it wanted to have influence over the Russian Empire was also wanted to have influence over the Afghanistan. British Indian Empire is fearing if Russia comes to Afghanistan, the British Indian Empire will also fall into their hands. So both were trying to influence, trying to impress Afghanistan through some, developmental aids. For example, after 1890, if you see, British India started building huge railway lines in India, the British Indian areas. They even offered railway lines to Afghanistan in the 1890s, late 90s. They offered these railway lines. And to counter this, the Russian Empire offered Afghanistan telegraph lines. So railway lines, telegraph lines, these empires were offering to Afghanistan to get the attention of it, to attract it towards themselves. But Afghanistan understood this. The game, this is called as the great game between the British India and Russian Empire. Great game, imperial game. So the Afghans understood it and they denied both. They denied both of them. If they take railway lines, that means they have to listen to the words of British India. If they accepted the telegraph lines, they have to listen to the Russian Empire. So they do not want to lose the freedom. They do not want to lose their independence. Already foreign affairs is in the hands of whom? British India. Already one mistake was done. So they are not again wanted to lose their further freedom. That's why they denied completely. That is the reason, sir. See, these are the points. The first point was that if you see conflict, Pakistan-Afghanistan conflict, border conflict. The reason was because of the Durand Line. And the second point, again I am saying very important point. Because they did not accept any offer from any empire, they are still in poverty, developmental poverty. We could not see lot many railway lines, lot many telegraph lines in Afghanistan even till today. Because they denied it completely from the foreign, technologies. They denied it because they lose their freedom. That was there in their mind. So even till today, one of the reasons for the poverty of Afghanistan is this. Instead of freedom, they lost development. They chose to lose development over freedom. So this is happening towards the end of the 19th century. Now, by 1900s, if you see, in the 1900s, the first 2 decades, in the 1907, what happened? Russian Revolution happened. So after Russian Revolution, Russia became, slowly in the 1920s, Soviet Union was formed. Socialism, the concept of socialism started in the Russia. So it was a huge, revolution in the Russian Empire. The Russian Empire collapsed and Russian Revolution happened. Soviet Union was started in the Russia. And in the same time, in 1910 and 20s, what was happening? In British India, our Indians were fighting for independence. They're fighting for independence. So when this was going on, that means both of the empires were started slowly losing their ground. This is the point I want to say. So when this was happening, in the 1914, suddenly World War was erupted on the world stage. World War I. So World War one was between whom? It was between Central Powers, that is the Germany, the Italy, the Japan, that is the fascism and Nazism countries, autocratic countries. So between the Central Powers and the Allied Powers. The Allied Powers are the capitalist countries like Britain, UK, like France, like France, UK, US, USSR. So this is the Allied Powers. Actually, in World War I, everyone thought that Afghanistan might, they may participate on the side of the Central Powers against the British India. Everyone thought like that because there was always a conflict between British India and Afghanistan. So they wanted to take revenge. So everyone thought like that. But Afghan people, they clearly know that there was a cultural contact between Indians and Afghans. So they never wanted to have to be on the side of the Central Powers. And even though the Afghan people did not want to be an enemy of Indians, the ruler of the Afghanistan, the then ruler of the Afghanistan, actually he has committed to the outside world. He committed to be neutral. He did not participate in the war and he did not choose any of the sides, either Allied sides or the Central Powers. But if you see from the side of the Central Powers, they reached out to the Afghanistan. Central Powers reached out to the Afghanistan. For example, mainly Germany. So in the 1914-15 period, Germany came to Afghanistan and said, hey look Afghanistan, if you support me, if you support the Central Powers in fighting against the British India, we will offer you huge developmental aid and a very good development to your country. This is what the Germany said. And during that war period, 1914 to 1918, 4 years period, Germany tried to reach out to Afghanistan. Yes, Afghanistan was neutral. To the outside, it was not participating in the war and it was not on any side. But inside, it was having a wish to be on the side of Central Powers. That is by taking the aid of Germany. And in the 1918, what happened? Allied Powers came victorious. So British India won the war, but with huge cost, of course. With huge cost of war. They won the war, World War I. Allied Powers won. So now Afghanistan, the ruler of the Afghanistan, because Germany and all other countries were defeated, they wanted to take revenge indirectly on British India and they supported Afghanistan, the ruler. They outraged the Afghanistan ruler. They motivated them from background. And in 1919, sir, very important point again I am saying, in 1919, for the first time, not for the first time, but first Anglo-Afghan war was waged by British India. Second Anglo-Afghan war was waged by British India. But for the first time, Afghanistan waged a war. They passed the Khyber Pass of the Hindu Kush mountains, Khyber Pass. Through that, they entered British India in 1919. The people of Afghanistan did not want that war, but the ruler was against British India. So he entered British India, and in 1919 there was a third Anglo-Afghan war. 1919, third Anglo-Afghan war, and in that third Anglo-Afghan war, a little bit Afghanistan, because already British India was tired of World War One. So it was like a favorable situation to the Afghanistan. So in that frustration, in that inability and helplessness, British India gave the full independence to Afghanistan. So in the 1919, by third Anglo-Afghan war, Afghanistan got full independence. Full independence means by 1890s, if you see, as I have said, from 1978, foreign relations were in the hands of whom? The foreign relations power. It was in the hands of British India. So even in 1919, that power was taken back to the Afghanistan, and they declared themselves, because they are victorious in the third Anglo-Afghan war, they declared themselves as a sovereign country, as an independent country in 1919. Even the foreign relations power they took back. And now Afghan people are too happy. Afghan king at least is too happy because they became too independent. Even the foreign relations power was with them itself, with themselves. So when the person who waged the war, the Afghan ruler, under whose leadership this third Anglo-Afghan war was happened and under whose leadership they got independence, he was King Amanullah. King Amanullah, sir, very, very important name. In the 1919, we are reaching to the modern era. So please, from here, focus. In 1919, King Amanullah, he made the Afghanistan independent and free. And he established, in 1919, he became victorious and Afghanistan became free. And after 2 to 3 years, in 1923, sir, very important, in 1923, under the leadership of King Amanullah, he established again a monarchy. He again established a strong monarchy in Afghanistan. Strong monarchy. So he started ruling. Who? Amanullah. Now, from 1923, very important, sir. Now, King Amanullah established his own kingdom, the monarchy, that is the Kingdom of Afghanistan. But this King Amanullah, he has a very unique character. He wants Afghanistan to be modernized. He has a vision that Afghanistan was to become a modernized country along with all other modernized countries. So what he did, after 1923, from 1923, when he became the king of the Afghanistan, he started reaching out to the international community to modernize his nation. For example, for foreign investments, for foreign technology import, for foreign aid and developmental, like that. So he was reaching out to international community. For the first time, we have seen Afghanistan's modern kingdom started reaching out to the international community, and especially if you see who are willing to give more help to Afghanistan, because King Amanullah waged a war against whom? British India. Who were happy then? Russian people. So that means the then Soviet Union. In 1923, after 1923, this King Amanullah, when he started reaching out to the international community, who responded so proactively? Russia, the Soviet Union. So especially Soviet Union helped King Amanullah a lot in the developmental works, and he started modernizing the country. For example, roads were started constructing, infrastructural work were being constructed, schools were started, slowly education started in the country. So this modernization was, this was the vision of King Amanullah. Under his kingdom, he was modernizing the country. From 1923 around 1928, within just 4 or 5 years, he has shown a huge, development or infrastructural development, roads, connectivity, which was completely different, contrary to their previous regimes. all the previous regimes were culturally too conservative. But for the first time, King Amanullah started reaching out to the Soviet Union and all international community, and he started building the country. But here lies actual point. But sir, the uniqueness of the Afghanistan, that's why I'm saying the instability is a part and parcel of the Afghans' blood, sir. It is not the stereotype, not Afghans' blood. I'm very sorry to say this, but the situations in the Afghanistan prevail like that. Instability, they are always vulnerable to the instability. So when King Amanullah started modernizing the nation and he was taking the aid of the Soviet Union, by 1928, when the developmental work started, when women started, education, when schools were started, the conservative community of the Afghanistan, conservative community, that means the tribal leaders, the religious leaders, who were once, the lone sayers, whatever they say, people used to listen. But now, all the developmental work that was happening, they thought it was against their cultural conservative values, their cultural Islamic values. And these tribal and religious leaders, they thought the country itself was going into the hands of some other person, some other country. They thought like that. They thought King Amanullah as the puppet of the Soviet Union. They thought like that. And in 1928 and 29, sir, very important point, in 1928 and 29, these tribal leaders and religious conservative leaders, they formed an armed organization. An armed organization to fight against whom? King Amanullah. And that organization name is called as Sakavist organization. Sakavist organization, it is an armed organization. So now we have seen in 1928 and 29, for the first time, a civil war erupted between the people, conservative section of the Afghanistan, and the pro-modernization section of the Afghanistan. That is the King Amanullah loyalists. There was a civil war in 1928 and 29. Amanullah was thrown off the power. And these conservative sections came into the power in 1928 and 29. But they could not. The problem with this tribal and the religious leaders was they cannot unite everyone. All other tribals, they cannot unify all the ethnic groups. They only, they are truly loyalists to their own particular tribe. They don't consider the, inclusiveness of other tribals. That's the reason Afghanistan is divided on the ethnic lines. That is the actually inbuilt problem of the country. They are not unified with a nationalism or some like concept. So when in 1929, when these religious and tribal leaders, one particular tribal leader becomes the leader of the or the king of the Afghanistan. Some other tribal leaders, warlords, they don't like it. So normally there was instability in the country. So by seeing all this, instability in the 1933, if you see, Amanullah, as I have said, the King Amanullah, he was a pro-modernist. He wants to modernize the country. So he has a cousin brother. And that cousin brother was Nadir Shah. His name was Nadir Shah. And he rebels against these tribal people and tribal leaders and the religious leaders who dethroned the Amanullah. And the cousin of the Amanullah, again takes back power in his hand. So Nadir Shah wants, the country to be modernized, but gradually. So he chose a middle path. Not as fast as Amanullah was visioned, not as slow as these tribal and religious leaders resisted, but a middle path. He wants to, reconcile everyone in the country. Nadir Shah. He was a pro-modernist itself because he was the cousin of the Amanullah, but slowly. After Nadir Shah, another person, the next king of the Afghanistan, by 1934 and 35, another king has come into power, and he also started slowly under his period, slowly developmental works again started. Pace up. They were pacing up. For example, roads again, infrastructure buildings, public buildings for the first time, like schools and etc. So this, modern infrastructure started developing again after 1930s, 34, 35, like that. So when this was going on, the king of that particular one who was pro-modernist, was the next king after the Nadir Shah's son. He was Zahir Shah. So under him, he always wanted, Zahir Shah always wanted to have a good relations, not with Soviet Union now. In 1930s and 35s, 40s, he wanted to have a relation with UK. Zahir Shah, he was the king. And in the 30s, when these roads, buildings, schools, everything, the public infrastructure was improving up. Again, they, normally conservative sections, they don't like it. And if you see, in 1953, so for 20 years, Zahir Shah period was going on. When Zahir Shah was the king. First Amanullah in 1923. After that came the religious and tribal parts. After that again in 1933 came back Nadir Shah, the cousin of the Amanullah. After Nadir Shah came the Zahir Shah. So in the 1953, normally the condition of the polity of the Afghanistan was like this. It was monarchy. The king was Zahir Shah, but along with the king, there would be having a prime minister, PM, along with the king, and he was supposed to be from the royal family. This was the polity of the Afghanistan. In 1953, the king was Zahir Shah, who was pro-UK. He loves to have a good relationship with United Kingdom, UK, British. But the prime minister, he was having a prime minister. He never liked to have a good relation with UK, and his name was Muhammad Daud Khan. Muhammad Daud Khan, sir, very important person. So this Muhammad Daud Khan, the Prime Minister of Zahir Shah in 1953, he has a very unique character. Muhammad Daud Khan. What is the character? Let us understand it. The first point is very clear. Zahir Shah wants to have a good relations with UK. That is British capitalist forces. So this Muhammad Daud Khan, he was the royal prime minister. He has a huge thirst for the power. He wanted to become the king. He wanted to become the sole, like a single sole authority of the Afghanistan. And he is, it's a very important point I am saying. In 1953, the prime minister of the Zahir Shah, the king, the prime minister was Muhammad Daud Khan. This Daud Khan was a Pashtun nationalist. He is the Pashtun nationalist. That means he is from a Pashtun tribal ethnic group which was dominant in the Afghanistan, and he wanted to establish a Pashtun country itself. Pashtunistan he used to call. He wanted to establish Pashtunistan. He was a nationalist of Pashtun. So here comes, here he says to Zahir Shah, King, dear king, we have to establish the Pashtun nation. This was the, proposal of this Daud Khan, but it was not liked by Zahir Shah. Why? Because if Muhammad Daud Khan wants to establish a Pashtun nation, that means some of the Pashtun lands were also in which country? In Pakistan. As I have said, when British were drawing a Durand line, some of the Pashtun lands were accorded to the Pakistan. So normally this Daud Khan wants even that lands to be grabbed and established as a single Pashtun nation. The Prime Minister of the Zahir Shah. This was not liked by the Zahir Shah because that would lead to a declined relationship with Pakistan. So if Daud Khan was encouraged by the Zahir Shah, that would lead to a conflict between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So Zahir Shah did not want this because he was, a pro-UKist. pro-British. So British were drawn that line. He did not like it. So in the 64, for the first time Zahir Shah thought, he had a thought in his mind to counter this PM's proposal, Daud Khan's proposal. What he did was, in the 1964, he for the first time introduced constitution in the Afghanistan. The king of the Afghanistan, that is Zahir Shah, introduced a constitution in the Afghanistan. And in that constitution, he wrote what? Prime Minister should be also from a non-royal family. That means a non-royal Prime Minister should also be given the opportunity to become the Prime Minister. This is what he wrote in the constitution. That means actually in 1964, why constitution came? Why Zahir Shah introduced constitution? Because he wanted Daud Khan, the Prime Minister of him, wanted to be he wanted to let him out of the PM post. So forcibly, by changing the constitution in 1964, Zahir Shah has sworn in some non-royal PM, and Muhammad Daud Khan ousted from the Prime Minister post. So this was happened in the 1964. Now, if you were Daud Khan and if you were ousted from the power, how would you have been thinking? The same thing, like you want to take revenge on the whom? On the Zahir Shah. You want to take the revenge normally. Whatever you are visioned, you want to take that, you want to do at any cost. So these revenge conspiracies were already being, ployed by whom? Daud Khan in the background. It was happening. And in the 1973, so very important, in the 1973, this Dawood Khan, Muhammad Dawood Khan, who was ousted from the Prime Minister post, he, along with some of the sections of the society, he led a bloodless coup. Not a bloodshed coup, but a bloodless coup against the Zahir Shah. This was the first coup which happened in the Afghanistan in 1973. So Dawood Khan, he ousted even Zahir Shah itself. He abolished the monarchy in 1973, and along with the support of some section of the people, society, he declared himself, after ousting the Zahir Shah from throne, kingship, he abolished the monarchy and he declared himself as the first president of the Afghanistan. Who is that? Muhammad Dawood Khan. So follow the story, very important, sir. So in 1973, this is the first bloodless coup happened against the monarchy, and they abolished the monarchy. Dawood Khan established the first, he declared himself as the first president of the Afghanistan. So now from 1973 to around 1978, this Dawood Khan, actually he wanted to have a Pashtun nationalism. He is a Pashtun nationalist. He wanted to always have a conflict with Pakistan. So when this nationalist policy of this Dawood Khan was going on, this is one side of the Dawood Khan, but he was also a person who also modernized the country, because he now changed, because he became the first president of the country. So he changed some ideologies of him. Along with his Pashtun nationalism, he started improving, he started giving some developmental work to the people. Again, infrastructure started developing, schools, education, etc. And they are also developing under the first president of the Afghanistan, that is 1973. So when this was going on, again, the people don't like it. Yes or no? They don't like it. So normally in 1978, it's very important, in the April 1978, there are some sections of the society who formed with the support, with the inspiration from whom? From Soviet Union. With the inspiration from Soviet Union, a section of the society of Afghanistan, they formed a party, a political party, and it was called as People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, PDPA. It was a communist party. It was a communist party, and as I have said, communist party means they inspired from whom? Soviet Union, which was the head of the boss of the communist countries. So what they preached to the communist countries? Even through bloodshed, they have to take the power and they have to implement the socialism. So that was the idea of communism with the bloodshed. So for the first time in April 1978, it's a very important point I am saying. For the first time, the party, the PDPA, which is a communist party, pro-Soviet party, People Democratic Party of Afghanistan, they led a bloodshed coup against the Dawood Khan, and they killed Dawood Khan, and complete family of Dawood Khan was being massacred. Sir, if you see, since ancient times, since Indus Valley civilization time, till 1978, Afghanistan was a little bit peaceful. Not peaceful exactly, but a little bit peaceful compared to the after 1978. And Afghanistan was secluded from the foreign invasions. It retained its freedom, it retained its independence, but for the first time, in the April 1978, that revolution, that PDPA-led revolution was called as Saur Revolution, S-A-U-R, Saur Revolution, and this was believed to be happened with the help of the Soviet Union. A lot of the scholars say like that. So there was a bloodshed coup against Muhammad Dawood Khan in April 1978, and PDPA established the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, DRA. Now they called the country as the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, and the ruling party was Communist Party, that was People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan. And now for the first time in 1978, the country became a communist state, a socialist state. So when this was going on, if you see, when this came, in April 17, 1978, when the PDP party came into power, normally a socialist state. So what they normally do? They started implementing their socialist policies, symbolic policies. For example, especially social reforms they do. They preach equality. Everyone are equal in the society. They preach egalitarian societal values. Egalitarian, so ethnic divisions, religious divisions, they should not be happen. Everyone are equal. Women and men are also equal. There should not be concentrated wealth in some hands. So they started, even the PDP party, I am saying, once they led a coup, and once they killed the Dawood Khan, the president of the Afghanistan, self-proclaimed president of the Afghanistan, in April 1978, they started implementing the land reforms. Why land reforms? Because implementation of land reforms, that means taking out concentrated lands from warlords and distributing it to everyone equally. So they want an egalitarian society. This is the socialism, the concept of socialism. So they started doing that. So when they were taking back lands from the warlords, tribal leaders, normally you can expect huge political dissent against this PDPA government. Yes or no? So yes, naturally in Afghanistan also, after April 1978, against this PDPA, the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, which was a socialist party, there was a huge political dissent. From whom? From tribal leaders, from tribal warlords, especially to say. But here lies the actual seed for the conflict. That is, once there was a political dissent against the PDPA government, communist or socialist government, that political dissent was completely curbed with huge repression and with huge force, with state force. They were using military. The PDPA was using the military for curbing the political dissent in the country. So normally people they became panic because government itself killing the warlords. So people became too panic, and there was a huge civil unrest going on throughout the 1978. There was a huge civil unrest against the government of the PDPA, socialist government. People wanted to whoosh this government at all, completely. They wanted to whoosh the socialist government. Because they are Islam, they are completely of Islam people. and they are seeing something very alien government, so socialist government. So they want to completely wipe out this. And in these situations, when the PDPA government was having an iron stand, iron leg on the political dissent, there are some factions in the society. They started, regrouping themselves into some small factional groups called as Mujahidins. So very important. You might have listened the term Mujahidins. Actually, the term Mujahidin means rebels. Rebels means those who want to wipe out the government. They are like they are the revolters. So when the civil unrest was going on because of this land reforms implementation, there was a huge unrest, and a small faction of guerrilla forces formed up in Afghanistan, and they are called as Mujahidins. So what is the main target of these Mujahidins? The target of these Mujahidins was to tear down the PDPA government, the socialist government, pro-Soviet government, pro-Soviet Union government. So Mujahidins formed small factions of Mujahidins. For example, inside the Pashtuns, there were some Mujahidins. Inside the Hajaras, there were some Mujahidins. Inside the Uzbeks of the Afghanistan, they formed some Mujahidins. So some smaller guerrilla forces started forming, and they started waging a guerrilla warfare against the PDPA government. So this is going on in the 1978, May, June, July, in that period. Now the very important point here is that if you see in the 1979, that means the year after that, Mujahideen started forming, and they are waging a war against the PDP. Sir, do you believe a small guerrilla forces who are civilians without any arms but want to revolt against the PDP, the socialist government, was it possible? To civilians, was it possible to overthrow a government? No. So there must be someone who has to pump the funds, who has to pump the weapons. To whom? These smaller guerrilla forces. Who are they? And here lies the world ideological war. That is, after 1947, once World War II was over, two superpowers were there in the world. The two superpowers became victorious. They are United States of America and the Soviet Union, USSR. USA and USSR, Soviet Union. These two are the bipolar. That was the complete world was bipolar by then. One is Asian power, one is Western power. There was no military conflict between these two, but there was always an ideological conflict, because Soviet Union was a socialist country, socialist bloc. It was spreading the socialism to every country, and you now have seen in 1978 it was even spread to Afghanistan. So Soviet Union was becoming too influential in Afghanistan. Their socialist state itself developed in the Afghanistan. All these developments were seen by whom? The opposite bloc, that is the capitalist bloc, which was led by United States of America. They did not want all the Asian countries to fall into the hands of socialism. They did not want it. They want their capitalism to thrive, and they want to resist this ideology of communism or the socialism. So when the world was watching the Afghanistan in 1978, when the Mujahideen factions started grouping up, and that means when the civilian unrest was there in the country, everyone wants to exploit the situation. Every power, every bloc of the world wants to exploit the situation in the Afghanistan. And now there was a huge regrouping on the world stage. For example, these Mujahideens, who were actually Afghans, they wanted to overthrow the PDPA government, socialist government. So now USA and USA's Binami-like country, that is the Pakistan. Pakistan is an ally of US since long ago, an ally of US. So Pakistan is used by US for all its activities in the region. So United States, through the ISI of the Pakistan, that is through the Inter Services Intelligence section of the Pakistan, organization of the Pakistan, ISI, through that organization, the United States of America started pumping cash, started pumping weapons, even surface to air missiles were believed to be sent through these Mujahideens. By whom? United States of America. Why? To counter this socialism to enter in Afghanistan, to overthrow the PDPA government. So United States started darkness itself. United States, through the Pakistan, started funding the Mujahideens of the Afghanistan. This is United States self-interest. Now, second one was Pakistan. Why Pakistan also wanted to help Mujahideens? It is because if a government comes which is in the hands of Pakistan, the border conflict and everything will not be there for Pakistan. So Pakistan wants their puppets to be in Afghanistan. So they chose Mujahideens as one of the way. So they took the Mujahideens to the border of the Pakistan. They allowed Mujahideens into the Northwestern Frontier Province, NWFP, Northwestern Frontier Province of Pakistan. And in that Pakistan's border, Mujahideens were trained. They even built the temporary training centers. The ISI of the Pakistan gave Inter-Services Intelligence, they gave the training to the Mujahideens in using the weapons which were sent by USA, etc. And another country which helped in this, which helped these Mujahideens was China. Why China also helped Mujahideens? It is because if in that period during 1978 China was on the rise and Chinese communism was completely different from the USSR socialism. So there was a conflict between China within the socialism and communism itself. There was a conflict. So China also, opposite to the USSR, started helping the Mujahideens. This is the third important country, and the fourth country which helped the Mujahideens was Saudi Arabia. Why Saudi Arabia helped the Mujahideens? They have funded a lot. Why? Through the Pakistan. It is because Saudi Arabia is the country in which Islam originated. So the Sunni section, the older Islamic section, represented by the Saudi Arabia, because Mecca and Medina were in Saudi Arabia. So the Islam which was present in Afghanistan was also Sunni majority. They are also Sunni section of the Islam, older Islamic section. There was also another section, that is Shia. So interpretational difference will exist within the same religion. So Saudi Arabia has its own interest, that is religious interest. So they also started helping the Mujahideens. And in the 1978 this was happening. Mujahideens versus the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan socialist government. And now to help the PDPA, who will come? Just imagine, just guess who will come? Soviet Union. So Soviet Union started sending lot of military advisors, lot of military support also, weapons, cash, etc. to the PDPA government to fight the Mujahideens. Now from 1978, if you see from 1978 till around 1979, there was a huge civil war existing between Mujahideens and the PDPA government. Mujahideens were, terrorized. They became terrorists. They started, planting landmines everywhere. They started killing the PDPA officials and all the government section everywhere. So Afghanistan became a huge war-torn country. Lot of civilians fled the country. Lot of civilians died in this, civil war between the Mujahideens and the PDPA. So when this was happening, if you see, in the 1979, when this PDPA was fighting with Mujahideens, the problem with the PDPA was that the government of the Afghanistan, socialist government, within the PDPA itself there were two different sections. They are also divided on some lines. There were two sections called as, one section was called as Khalak belonging section, Khalak, and another section of PDPA was called as Parcham section. So this Parcham section of the PDPA party was very moderate in their ideology, very moderate. They are not extremist and they are not dominant. But this Khalak section of the PDPA government was, they are dominant in their approach. And Soviet Union normally supports the Parcham section, that is the moderate section of the party, People's Democratic Party, Soviets, the government of Afghanistan. And here another conflict which led to a huge disaster in the latter times, that was the Soviet Union president was from Parcham section. President was from Parcham section, which was supported by the Soviet Union, and the Prime Minister of the PDPA government was from Khalak section. So normally this Khalak section were dominant. So normally with the support of the some Khalak dominated society, PM assassinated the president itself. So president means the Soviet pro person. He was assassinated by the Khalak. So when this happened, now who came to power? Who came to power? Now the Prime Minister, that is the Khalak section, came to power. Yes, the party is PDPA government, socialist state, but who came to power? The dominated section, that is Khalak section, Prime Minister. Now he became president. He is not in a good relationship with Soviet Union, because Soviet Union supports the Parcham section, the assassinated one, the assassinee. They support that person. So normally during this period of 1979, at the end of the 1979, if you see, when this Prime Minister, when he assassinated the president, he became president. So under him, his name was Amin, Hafizullah Amin. And this person, he never cared the Soviet Union itself. He never cared the Soviet Union. He never cared it. And this led to a huge, fears in the mind of the Soviet Union. So Soviet Union thought Afghanistan is losing ground. Afghanistan is losing the influence of Soviet Union, because he was not caring. He was not caring the Soviet Union. The new president, the Khalak section dominated president. So now he became the president, and he was killing almost everyone who was opposing him in the government itself, the People's Communist Party itself. He was killing everyone who was against him. So Soviet Union was too furious against him, and it wanted to teach him a lesson. And in the December 1979, if you see, in the December 1979, Soviet Union itself invaded Afghanistan. So this is the turning point in the history. In the December 1979, Soviet Union itself invaded the Afghanistan, and with a huge lakhs of soldiers, thousands of soldiers and lot of military weapons, Soviet Union entered Afghanistan. And it completely killed this person, that is the PDPA person itself, but he was from opposite section, opposite faction. So the Soviet Union, with their military support mighty, they killed this Hafizullah Amin, and they had put a puppet again, another puppet in that socialist state government, and that puppet name was Bobrak Karmal. His name was Babrak Karmal. So he was the new PDPA General Secretary, that is, he was the president of the country. But the change here is, now the Soviet Union itself entered directly with their military support and military weapon. Already Mujahideens were fighting the PDPA, but now when the Soviet Union itself invaded the country and they put directly the puppet of them, it was a huge defeat to the Mujahideens. So they were too outraged. And now United States, Pakistan, when the Soviet Union directly entered Afghanistan land, now everyone were alerted. So Saudi Arabia, United States, China and Pakistan, everyone started giving active support to the Mujahideens. Some lakhs and crores of rupees were given, funded. Lot of different advanced military weapons were given to these guerrilla forces, Mujahideens. And in the December 1979, Afghans under the different sections of Mujahideens started a civil war. Not civil war. It is civil war means within the one country two sections will fight. This is not a civil war. This is against Soviet Union because they want their country to be free. They don't want a Soviet Union or some foreign country to enter into it. So now Soviet-Afghan war started in December 1979. Between whom? The Mujahideen sections and the Soviet Union. So this war, when it started in December 1979, it went on and went on for 10 years, sir. 10 bad years. 10 years. Lakhs of soldiers of Soviet Union were standing in front of the streets. They want the socialist state to be ruled there. And the people, Afghan people, under the leadership of these Mujahideens, wanted to send out Soviet Union from their country with the support of all backed countries, US, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, China. And in this 10 long years war, if you see, around 20 lakh Afghan civilians were killed, sir. Mujahideens used to plant a landmine, lot of civilians used to die. They want to give a message to Soviet Union that if you don't leave the country, we make the country a graveyard. This is the message by killing the civilians. The Mujahideens were giving that message. So 20 lakh civilians were killed in this war between the Soviet Union troops and the Mujahideen. And almost 60 lakh Afghans, they fled the country completely. They went out. There was a huge refugee crisis on the borderlands like Pakistan and in Iran. There was a huge border crisis. So when this war was going on, in almost 10 years it went on, and in the 1989, and I'm again saying, sir, very important turning point in the history of Afghanistan. In the 1989, the Soviet Union, the socialist bloc of the world, started weakening itself on its economy. The Soviet bloc started economically weakening itself. A lot of the Soviet countries, communism countries, started collapsing. Their financial conditions were too weak. People are in hungry. There was a huge malnutrition. So this socialism proved to be too harsh. So by observing all these conditions, Soviet Union in the 1989, it's a very important point. Soviet Union in 1989 started withdrawing their troops from the country and they went back. So once they started withdrawing their troops without any result that they get by 10 years of war, it was a war actually on civilians. It was looked like that. So in 1989, Soviet Union troops went out of the Afghanistan. And the moment they went out, these Mujahideen sections again started. They came out, the guerrilla forces, they came out and they waged the war against the puppet PDPA government, that is under Nazibullah, the next PDPA General Secretary. After Babra Kamral, the next one was Nazibullah. So once Soviet troops were out of the Afghanistan, Mujahideen factions waged a very offensive, huge, violent offensive against the PDPA. And for 3 years, the war went on. From 1989, civil war. It is again a civil war now. Mujahideen versus PDPA, socialist government. So for 3 years it went on. And in these 3 years, what happened on the world stage? In 1991, during the December and 92 January, the Soviet Union collapsed. Soviet Union collapsed and socialism was proved to be a failure concept. All the communist states were started falling down. And once the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, who was emerged as the victory and the superpower of the world? It was United States of America. So now after 91, end of the 91, United States was the sole superpower of the world. Capitalism was proved to be the fit economic concept. So who gained upper hand here? The US backed Mujahideens. gained upper hand, and the support from Soviet Union slowed down to the PDPA government, and Mujahideen started raising up. And for 2 years, these 3 years, this war went on. In 1992, it's a very important point. In 1992, Mujahideens overthrew the PDPA government. They overthrew the PDPA government. Socialist government, communist government was overthrown. And in 1992, Mujahideen sections formed a coalition government in the Afghanistan. They formed a coalition government in the Afghanistan. Now again the conflict arises. That is, the problem here is that when Mujahideens, the guerrilla forces who are too violent, who are supported by the Pakistan ISI, all the terrorist organizations, when they came to power and they formed coalition government, actually it was not looking like a government itself. There were huge factions inside the Mujahideens. As I have said, Pashtuns have their own Mujahideen gangs, Hazaras were their own Mujahideen gangs. So when they come together and form a coalition government after overthrowing the PDPA government, PDPA, socialist state, now this coalition government proved to be too fatal to the Afghanistan, too fatal. There are huge infightings. Mujahideen factions themselves are fighting for power. Themselves are fighting. They left the country for nothing. And 92 to almost 94, there was a huge power racing between the different Mujahideen factions, and even they resorted to violence again. One Mujahideen section started throwing bombs on another Mujahideen section. So there was a huge anarchy going on from 92 to around 94. Sir, now when the Mujahideen section proved to be a fatal, they could not able to run the government. When there was a huge violence, even when Mujahideens came to power, civilians were again unrest. There was a huge unrest in the civilians. Under these anarchical conditions, under this huge, even Kabul, the capital city of the Afghanistan, inside the Kabul itself, two Mujahideen sections bombed each other. There was a bombardment of even Kabul. So people did not like it. They wanted a stabilized government. They wanted a stabilized government, which was not ideologically submissive to Soviet Union or either United States, etc. They want their own unique, cultural based, unique Islam based political organization. And under these circumstances, in the September 1994, sir, very important event on the world stage. In the September 1994, when the Mujahideen sections could not able to give a proper government to the Afghanistan people, in the September 1994, there was a student, his name was Mullah Omar. There was a student, he was the student of Afghanistan. He went to Pakistan and he studied in the, we call them as Islamic madrasas. So inside the Pakistan, there were some Islamic madrasas, that means schools. And in those Islamic madrasas, what they teach to the students? They teach the conservative Islamic culture. They teach the extreme ideologies. They teach extreme Islamic interpretation of Sharia law and etc. So Pakistan government deliberately trained and ideologically brainwashed a student, and his name was Mullah Omar. And when Mullah Omar came back to Afghanistan, that is Kandahar, his proper was nearby Kandahar. So when he came back to Kandahar, he, along with some 50 students, 50 youthful students, he formed an organization. And in the Afghani language, student was called as Talib. And the plural form, students, were called as Taliban. So this Mullah Omar, along with 50 other students, formed an organization called as Taliban. And what is the objective of the Taliban? They